Good afternoon, fellow truth seekers. Welcome to another, a little colder but beautiful day in Texas. On this Sabbath day, we have some time to study, and one of the chapters in the study today is John 15. And I think the theme of John 15 is a little different than we interpret it, but Jesus says, I'm the vine and you're the branches. Well, there's a couple other ways to look at that. And I would like to share with you some really beautiful parts of John 15. The theme of John 15 is stay with me. That's Jesus saying, stay with me, live from me, and love like me. Because Jesus says in John, he says in John 15:5, without me, you can do nothing. That means you can't live without Jesus, period. You can't live. And basically, then after he says, without me, you can do nothing, he says, love one another as I have loved you. So, how many people do you love like Jesus loved you? I know, that's pretty tough love, right? And on that, I like what Jesus says in John 15:16. And Jesus says, I have chosen you. Yes, I have chosen you. Not we chose him, but he chose us. So the point is, in this chapter, it's about connection. Yeah, it's about connection. It's about life flowing from Jesus into his people. Now, we have some trees in the back, and we actually have some vines, some grapevines. And really, if you're not connected to the roots, you're not growing. And we've had some grapevines that didn't grow very well because they weren't connected, just like in our lives. So what we're learning here in this chapter is that life comes from Jesus, nobody else. If you think you can live without Jesus,
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. And I like that, because Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I'm it. And of course, we go and say, then if you're it, why are you pruning me? Because he wants more fruit from you and me and me. So Jesus says, I'm the vine. My Father's the gardener. The Father does the pruning, not Jesus. And you are the branches. However, Jesus is the source of life. And to this point, no branch, not you, not me, not anybody, has life in and of themselves. So that becomes a sugar moment. Because if I want life and want it more abundantly, I have to stay connected to the vine. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple questions, because pruning hurts, by the way. If you've not been pruned lately, you will be soon. If you're a truth seeker, you're going to get pruned. But where am I trying to live without leaning on Jesus? That's where you're going to get pruned. What might God be wanting to prune from my life right now? Am I more interested in comfort, or am I more interested in fruitfulness? So there's a key. Do you want to bear fruit? Well, I think we do, but are we going to bear fruit? No, Jesus is going to bear fruit in us through the Father's pruning. But the fruit shows up in us. So you, fellow truth seekers, are going to also bear fruit. So we don't want to have no fruit on our vines. We want the fruit. So Jesus says, if you want the fruit, in John 15, 9 to 11, pardon me, we have cats in the house, and I'm sorry if they disturb you. But abide in my love, John 15, 9 to 11. Abide in. So how do you abide in love? Oh, we then basically say Jesus loves his people out of the divine love between him and his Father. So Jesus says, how the Father and I love each other is how I'm going to love you. Wow. Can you imagine what that love between Jesus and the Father is like? I'm thinking that's pretty good. That's not a very shallow life. That's a very rich life. So Jesus is saying, just let me love you. Let me love you. So I would say to that, this is really awesome. And Jesus is saying, stay in my love. Stay in my love. How do you stay in the love of Jesus? How do you stay? I'm really wanting to know that, because it's the most powerful. If you stay in my love by walking with me, agreeing with me, keeping my words, you know what he gives you? One word: the fruit of joy. I like the fruit of joy. And then Jesus says in John 15, 11, these things I have spoken to you, that my joy might remain in you, and that my joy might be full in you. I'm telling you, Jesus is trying to make your life bigger, richer, fuller, not trying to make it shrink. So therefore, Jesus is saying, do I live as somebody deeply loved by Jesus? Do you live by somebody deeply loved by Jesus? Well, I don't know. Do I treat obedience like a burden, or do I treat obedience like closeness? Yes, Jesus commands, and do I resist? Or do I say, hey, Jesus, bear as much fruit as you can? Because where does the fruit bearing come from? The fruit bearing comes from Jesus. And then Jesus drops the bomb. Love one another as I have loved you. In families, how many of us love each other as Jesus loves us? Because that's what he said. I don't know about you, but love one another. That's John 15, 12. Love one another as I have loved you. And then Jesus goes on to say, this is my commandment. It's not now just abiding in me. It's commandment in me. This is my commandment, that you love one another. Not that. That you love one another as I have loved you. Wow. I'm saying, really? As I have loved you? That's pretty costly. In fact, that's a real costly love, because Jesus died for us. Serve one another as I have served you. Be patient with one another as I have been patient with you. Cross-shape your love. Cross-shape your love. And then Jesus goes on and says, greater love hath no man than that he lays down his life for his friends. Fellow truth seekers, do we love each other that way? Do you love each other to where you can lay down your life for them, your friends? Or do you say, I ain't that's too rich. That's too costly. I am gonna back it down a little bit. No, Jesus is saying, friends, not servants, I'm about to show you what love looks like. Wow. Okay. Then Jesus says, you have not chosen me, because I've chosen you, and I've ordained you from the beginning. So I'm all in on you, Jesus says. And I'm all in on you because I want to be connected with you, and I want the love that Jesus and the Father have to flow from me, not me, but Jesus, to each one of us. So this means your life in Jesus is not an accident. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. God chose you, fellow truth seekers, for a purpose. He chose you for fruit bearing, and he chose you to carry something eternal. Wow. Okay, so then, do I love others only when it's convenient? Oh, I have sadly heard lots of people say, well, he's not a very lovable person, so I really can't love him. Or she's kind of challenging for love, so I'm not sure she's very lovable. What if Jesus said that about you or I? What if Jesus said, well, I don't know about Jerry. He's kind of difficult. I don't think I'm going to love him. I'm thinking I'm just going to prune him really bad. But what would we say would our Christ-like love look like if our relationships were hard? Oh, well, Jesus says you got to love them as I loved you. Do I see myself as chosen for fruit bearing, or do I see myself chosen for looking good with a lot of flowers and a lot of beauty, but my fruit in my life will actually not be that important? And Jesus says in John 15:18 and through 25, the world's going to hate you because you're going to love people. Oh, right now we have a lot of hate going on in the world. A lot of hate going on in the world. And to that, Jesus is becoming challenging for all of these worldly wars, these worldly family issues. That Jesus is saying, I got fruit to give to my people, holy, truthful, and I expose the darkness, and I bring people to the life, right? Because if we're connected with Jesus in the vine, we got all kinds of life. We got all the good. So Jesus says, do not measure yourself by popularity. Do not panic when fruitfulness costs you something. If you belong to me, you may be misunderstood. But the important thing is, you reflect me. So that's great. And I'd say this in closing, we need to learn to abide in Jesus, not just to put on the image of fruit bearing, but we have to bear much fruit, because without fruit, we won't show that we have any life in Jesus. So that means teach me to obey Jesus, teach me to love one another, give me courage when the world pushes back, and let your Spirit, Jesus, help me bear witness that you are the truth, you are the life, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life to the Father, so the Father can be that gardener in each one of our lives. Thank you, fellow truth seekers, and have a blessed day.